All right, the Reds, it's on this day with me, Gareth Roberts, Paul Cope with me, and we're talking about today when Liverpool signed Lucas Leiva. That was on this day in 2007, a Rafa Benitez signing. And when he arrived, I remember he was sort of heralded as being a fantastic player because he'd won a nice award out in Brazil for the player of the season and all this kind of thing. And then basically, as soon as he actually got in the side, loads of people instantly hated him.
It's mad this, we started going through this before. And I was like, it'd be great to go back and see why did some people just take an instant dislike to him? Because I remember, it's funny this, isn't it? Because I mean, this is going back some years for us, I was a relatively young man, 27 then. I remember sort of hitching myself to his wagon really early and being like, I love him. I remember seeing clips of him in Brazil and he'd won the Young Player of the Year award and people were raving about him. And I remember saying to people, he's going to be like a Lampard. He's going to score 20 a season and you should see him. He's box to box and he's brilliant and he's skillful and he scores goals. And then, some people just absolutely hated him. And so obviously from a very early stage, I didn't realise how early stage it was that I'm in the Lucas camp and you're against the Lucas camp and now we're just going to fight about this for the next 10 years.
I used to do a fanzine called Well Red and I did a front page, I think it was only like the second edition as well, like Lucas Leiva, good enough for Liverpool, ? And like there was, a piece for and a piece against. And that just seemed to go like right through his career. I mean, some of the early days, there were moments there, sort of, the Wigan Athletic, I think, away, he gives a penalty away or something like that, and everyone was fuming about that. There was loads of little moments like that, but the big sliding doors moment where you still think, if that goal had gone in against Everton at Goodison Park when Phil Neville blocks it on the line and is sent off for handball, would he have been accepted more? As it was, he had to sort of wait what felt like a long, long time before he was accepted. I felt like he was never accepted by some, but I think by the end he'd won a lot of people over. Maybe, he won a lot of people over for his defensive performances, didn't he? I think, he shackles Silva, doesn't he, at Anfield in a game against City really well. Yeah. And then there's obviously, the sort of the funny side to him as well, the little memes, the unlucky and all that kind of thing. And we were fortunate enough to interview him as well at Melwood, and he was a lovely fella. We've plugged that interview enough. It's been out there. If you haven't listened to it by now, what have you been up to? But honestly, me and Andy went to interview him. Sam was filming it. And he was a lovely bloke, honestly, really, really sound. He still to this day sort of engages with Liverpool content. You see him tweeting and on his Instagram talking about Liverpool. And he's gone to Lazio and done all right as well, player of the year there.
Yeah. Well, this is the funny thing about him. When you go back to why was he disliked, I think there was an element, even back then, there was an element of the fan base that they just didn't like Rafa Benitez. And he was very much a Rafa Benitez man, absolutely. Wasn't he? Like, it was like he was immediately linked to Benitez in a way some other players weren't. Like, madly. Like, Rafa bought Alonso as well, but then people hated Rafa for however he wanted to treat Alonso. This weird thing. It's almost like Lucas was his son, wasn't it? That's how some people treated it. Like, he's your lad and that's why you like him. It's not just a fella I bought from Brazil.
I remember writing a piece as well, years and years and years ago, obviously now, but saying sort of like, if he was from Garston or something, then he'd be a lot more accepted.
And he had long hair as well when he signed and stuff, didn't he? And it is weird this with footy fans, because he got his hair cut short and then people started to like him a bit more and Rafa had gone. And I've got loads of sympathy for Lucas, and I wonder whether, and I don't know whether it was in the interview you did with him or another one I've heard with him where he talked about the pace of the game and how he struggled with it a bit and he got converted into being a defensive midfielder. But I just wonder, that sliding doors moment is a big one for me. If that goes in, does his life go in a completely different direction? He becomes a cult hero early on. That game, I think it was that game, he comes on for Gerrard. Is that the one?
Don't do me for memories.
I know,
we're both going to put this.
It might have been that derby anyway, where basically they were down to 10 men and Rafa Benitez hooked Gerrard to put Lucas on. I think it is this one. Yeah. And obviously anyone who dislikes Rafa at the time thinks that's ludicrous. But what Rafa was saying was, Gerrard was playing that game with his heart and I needed someone to play with their heads because we had an extra man and we weren't making the most of it. And Lucas came on and basically dominated the game. He dictated play. And I'm pretty sure it's the same one where then, if he'd have gone on to put a winning goal in the top corner, it not only potentially changed how everyone perceives you, but potentially changes how you are as a player. Maybe that's enough for him to go, well, I'll stick at being a bit of an attacking midfielder here. And because I have got those abilities. I don't know whether anyone who's watching has seen the clips, but go back to when he won the young player in Brazil. His skill levels were incredible. He was being talked about so highly back then as a box-to-box midfielder. So I do wonder whether he ever thinks could it have all been different. And at the end of the day, it all worked out okay, didn't it? He became a hero in his own right.
In that interview we did him, he said he enjoys Liverpool, enjoys the Scouse culture. Seemed to get on with most people at Melwood and stuff like that as well, and with his teammates. And he had a little pop at Carragher in that interview we did with him, and who can forget as well, sort of fronting the Stoke fans that time, which was a brilliant little insight into his character as well. So look, whether you liked him or not, I think at the end of the day you can say that he served Liverpool well, that he was a character, that he was a nice fella, and okay, maybe not the most talented fella to ever wear the red, but every player can't be that player. Anyway, that's been an On This Day about Lucas Leiva.